Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Um, just want to make sure everybody can hear me.
hmm I can hear you.
Yes. Hi, Bill.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill.
Hello, Kristin, Sean, John Grimminger. How are you doing today?
Hey, Bill. I'm driving, so if I'm not immediately
Oh,
responsive, I apologize.
not a problem. Thanks for joining. Um, so this is the June Public Transportation Committee meeting for TCS, and we have the distinct pleasure, I think, of having Kristin Curtis. She's the Associate Director of Research at the Walter Rand Institute at Rutgers, and she'll be making a presentation to us today. Um, I'm sorry, Sean, do you know, is Patrick McDevitt coming or no?
I'm
Do you
not
know?
sure. Just out of respect for everybody's time, we should probably jump in and get started, and we can update him after the
Understood.
fact.
All righty. So I'll tell you what, I provided a small intro to Kristen, but I want to let her jump in and do her thing. How about that?
Right out of the gate, Bill, you didn't tell me that. I thought you would have some, business before before I had the opportunity. Hi, Sean. Hi, Edward. And I think, was it John who's driving, I
John,
think?
yes.
John, it is a real pleasure to meet all of you. I really appreciate you inviting me to your June meeting. It was a real pleasure to speak with Bill yesterday. As Bill said, I work at the Walter Rand Institute at Rutgers Camden, and we have done a lot of research in the transportation arena. And I put together a slide deck, which I know I sent out ahead of time. I am happy to, I know there were a lot of slides. I'm also happy to shorten it in the interest of time if needed. And I can jump right in and get started if that works for you, Bill and Edward, John and Sean. I want to be respectful of your time as well.
Sure,
Yeah, you're a
absolutely.
leisure.
Uh,
Bill, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just jump in with this. Christian, the work that you guys are doing is vitally important to our mission, which we're actually still, in the whiteboard process. So,
okay.
we're in South Jersey, and we all know it's a transportation desert. So please take all the time you feel appropriate.
Okay, and if there's questions, you can stop me in between, or I'm happy to answer questions at the end as well. I really just want to make this informal and really, hopefully provide the information that's helpful to all of you. So I'm going to share my slide deck. And let's see, I got a new computer last week, so let's see if I have to flip flip the screen, which is not a problem. Yep, I do.
There you
It's
go.
not.
We can see your full screen
Oh, you can see the
Yes.
full screen. Perfect. So I don't
presentation.
have to. Perfect. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure. So that's perfect. So I'm really excited to speak with all of you today. We've done a couple of reports, as Bill shared, one that focused on the barriers and considerations across all of South Jersey. So we include Ocean County in southern New Jersey. And then we specifically did a report that's focused on the community level recommendations in Camden County. And so I've kind of tailored our slide deck just to kind of cover both of those. Obviously, if there's questions outside of the slide deck, I'm more than happy to answer them as well and continue the conversation. But just to level set, because I haven't had the pleasure of meeting all of you except for Bill, I wanted to share a little bit about the Walter Rand Institute. I'm really excited to share we're in our 25th year and we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. Many of you may have heard of Senator Walter Rand and his relation to transportation. Obviously, the Walter Rand Transportation Center is about 6 blocks away from my office. And so we're his namesake. And by happenstance, transportation has really become an important part of the research that we're doing, especially in recent years. And so we exist for a couple of reasons. We really want to focus on community focused and community engaged research across southern New Jersey. And so we work, we have multiple projects in Atlantic County, Burlington, Cumberland, Camden. We also have had projects in Salem, and Kate May and others as well. But we really exist to provide research around the issues that are important to South Jersey. And at any one time, we have anywhere from 12 to 15 active projects, and they can range in areas of disciplines such as transportation, food security, education. We also have many program evaluations and social service delivery projects as well. And so I really like to think we're not faculty members at the Walter Rand Institute, we're all staff members. So I really like to think that we're really generalist and that we can really span across disciplines to really understand the issues and challenges that are facing our residents, friends, and neighbors in Southern New Jersey. And so we have a real expertise in qualitative research. We love to go out into the field and talk to people through focus groups, through interviews. We also can do quantitative data with surveys and analyzing secondary data, just to name a few. And sometimes we'll combine them together for some of our projects as well. And one of another important mission that we like to do is convene stakeholders or participate in meetings such as this one to really share the research so that it can empower and inform stakeholders and folks who are in positions of power or those who wish to advocate and they have some data behind the things that they want to advocate for. We have a really strong footprint in Southern New Jersey. You'll see in our most recent project, we connected with 50 of our partners to really spread the word about this survey. So we have a lot of community partners, both some legislators, a lot of nonprofits, family success centers, faith-based organizations, and many others, to name a few, across the area. And we, as I said before, we try to just really be responsive to the issues in South Jersey. And so today, I wanted to just kind of take you through some of our recent transportation research across Southern New Jersey, with a specific focus on the priorities and recommendations that we heard from community members in Camden County. And then I also want to share a little bit about some of the future research we're hoping to do too, if we can find some funding sources as well. And so just to kind of level set and share a couple of things, this is actually our first report where we actually worked across 10 years of data. So what was really interesting is across all of our projects, regardless of whether it was a community health needs assessment for a healthcare organization, if it was a study looking at the social emotional learning program in a school in Gloucester County, or a program evaluation of the Boys and Girls Club in Cumberland County, or a large-scale social service delivery evaluation across 4 of our counties. What was really coming up time and time again over the course of 10 years was transportation. Whether that was the main research question or not, it kept coming up in every single study just about. And it was highlighting how transportation, or I should say the lack of transportation access, was a challenge for folks accessing food, accessing employment, accessing education, just to name a few, accessing healthcare, and trying to get from different places from point A to point B across the different counties in Southern New Jersey, because we've seen this in multiple studies. So just to share, there were about 10 projects that we looked at from 2012 to 2022. Many of them were focused during the period of 2019 to 2022. And so we did have some data that came through during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we worked across all of South Jersey. We worked with AtlantiCare and Spira Health. We worked with several partners in Camden County, Salem County, Burlington County, and Cumberland County as well. And then we also had some data from our neighbors in Cape May and Ocean County as well. And Burlington as well. So we were really able to kind of span that gamut. And then we had a study that spanned Atlantic, Camden, Cumberland, and Salem County as well. So we had a rural component that we were able to build in. And so we had many focus groups, many interviews. We had a lot of survey data. And then we also pulled data from New Jersey Transit and the New Jersey Department of Transportation, and some census data and other important data as well, to kind of put this portrait together that highlighted some of the barriers and challenges facing our neighbors in Southern New Jersey. And what I wanted to just share was I bolded the counties that I know Tri-County Sustainability focuses on: Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester. And I just wanted to share just the county specific highlights, if you will. One of the things that really kind of came through was that transportation in all of these counties was ranked within the top 3 as a barrier to accessing services, whether those services were healthcare services, education services, employment services, whatever it might be. So that was really, really interesting. And then where it kind of got really interesting as well is that many of these counties highlighted transportation, particularly public transportation, as a missing resource in its counties as well. And so Burlington and Gloucester really noted these as concerns, but they were ranked a little bit higher, if you will, when compared to Cumberland and Salem County. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight some of those pieces as well. And then one of the challenges too was particularly in our rural county, Cumberland and Salem noted that there were challenges with access link, Movid care, which I know has kind of changed to logistic care now. And then what was interesting was the folks that we surveyed in Pennsgrove and Salem City, nearly a quarter of those folks that we surveyed identified that they didn't have a car, which was really interesting because I know I'm preaching to the choir here where all of you know that there's certainly public transportation challenges. There's not that many buses that go through Salem and Cumberland on a frequent basis. So just wanted to highlight that. I put a QR code if you're interested in the report or you didn't have a chance to see the document yesterday that Bill sent out on my behalf. And then what I really wanted to kind of focus some of my time on today was the research that we did specifically highlighting community voice in Camden County. And so we were very fortunate to receive a grant from the New Jersey State Policy Lab to really investigate the priorities and recommendations of community members in Camden County. So we did that larger study where we identified the gaps in each of the counties. And what we want to do ideally is go county by county to really understand the community recommendations and priorities. And so we started in our backyard in Camden County, where Rutgers Camden is and where several of our partners are. So we could kind of understand those community recommendations. And then we're hoping to find funding to do it in the other 7 counties because each county is very unique. It's not a monolith. South Jersey, we have our coastal communities, our rural communities, our more urban communities, and then things in between as well, not just within counties, but across the counties as well. And so we had 2 really important research questions. What are the priorities around transportation for the users across Camden County? And then what do they recommend to help enhance the transportation system in Camden County? And so I'm really excited to say that we had really great engagement across, PACCO supported our work, New Jersey Transit, and they allowed us to put flyers on the buses. They used the digital boards, both here in New Jersey and in Philadelphia, to spread the word about the survey and the focus groups. We also did in-person canvassing at both the PACCO and the New Jersey Transit station. And then we also worked with 50 partners that we know throughout the region to really spread the word about the work that we were doing, both through surveys and focus group. And then what we tried to do is when we were trying to make sure that we had responses from every municipality in Camden County, and where we saw some lagging, we reached out by using direct mailing through the United States Postal Service. And I'm really excited to say we got 31. We had responses from 31 out of the 36 counties in Camden County, municipalities rather, in the county. And so we had about 233 survey responses and 70 people participated in our focus group. And so these were residents and commuters who had something to share that took the time to speak with us and fill out the survey as well. And so these are just a very short list of some of our partners. We worked with some of the family success centers. We worked with a service that works to provide support services to domestic violence survivors. We worked with Cathedral Kitchen. As many of you know, they work to support the unhoused. We also worked with the Camden Coalition and many of the libraries throughout the county as well, just as a snapshot. And so through those efforts, we were really able to engage a lot of folks. And so what did we learn from the survey and from the focus group? Well, I'm really excited to share that what we did was we had good participation from young people all the way up to older adults as well. Many of the responses were from people 25 to 49. And what was really good was we had a pretty even split of those who identified as female and male. Usually it's higher, it's like a 60-40 split in favor of women. So it was good that we were able to really kind of have that split representation. We had about 7 in 10 of the folks identified as white, about 2 in 10 identified as Black or African American, and we had close to about 10% identify as Hispanic or Latino. And you're going to see a map on this slide as well. And what we tried to do was kind of divide the county. And I'm going to explain why in just a minute. You're going to see kind of the red dividing line in the middle. And that's kind of where the Haddonfield PACCO station is. So we kind of have in the gray, the northwest area of the county, which is Pennsauken, Cherry Hill, Camden City, Collingswood, Haddonfield, Haddon Heights. And then below, we have the southeastern portion of the county, which starts to become more rural. Your Voorhees, Berlin, Atco, Chislehurst, Winslow, Waterford, and so forth. And the reason that we did that was because we wanted to kind of tease apart the differences across the county within the transportation patterns and the responses as well. And so that's why we did that, and I'll share a little bit of that in just a moment after the next slide. But what I wanted to share is there were about 6 buckets that really emerged from all of that data, focused on reliability of public transportation, coverage and accessibility, safety and security, just to name a few. And so I wanted to kind of take you through each of the themes. And what I thought could be helpful is kind of identifying what people shared that they appreciated and saw as strengths in the current public transportation system, and then things that people recommended as well. Bill had shared that was something that was very important to all of you. So these things that you're going to see on, it's my right, it might be your left, depending on the screen, is the recommendations from the community. And I'll kind of walk you through some of those things as well. And so many folks, with respect to reliability of public transportation, many folks really appreciated that the public transportation system existed because they could use it for their commutes. However, there's some challenges within that folks really voiced to us. One is they would love to see the public transit improve its punctuality, particularly around some of the New Jersey transit buses. That was one. There was a lot of mention across the focus groups that the buses and trains really didn't adhere to the schedules, and that created some issues with some of the connections, missing connections, different things like that. Something that folks really shared that would just be really helpful, and it seemed like an easy lift, is that if buses are delayed, or there's things that come up, just updating the timetable and the travel times in real time at either the platform or at the transit center. And they also would love to see more buses come through like the busier times and during peak times. That was something else that folks, recommended. Something that we heard a lot, particularly around the buses, is that not all of the stops were made. There were certain stops that would be missed, and folks are like, we would love it if they could just make all the stops because I need to get off at this stop and I don't want to walk back, a half a mile or whatever it might be. And also announcing the stops, because some folks shared that they had recently moved to Camden County and they were using the public transit system, but they weren't used to everything yet. So if the stops could be announced, that would be helpful. And then they knew when to kind of get off. And then something else was just continued customer service training and increasing accountability for poor customer service, but rewarding exceptional performance. We heard from folks time and time again about really great bus drivers and how helpful they were, or how they went out of their way, and that there were others that didn't do so well and maybe needed to be trained a little bit more. So those were a couple of things that we heard. And then this was just kind of a highlight. On page 59 of our report, we kind of have the longer version of this kind of spelled out in more detail. If you're interested, I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well. The second biggest theme that we also heard was around coverage and accessibility, which is kind of related to the reliability. And this, again, I want to emphasize that the report on page 32 really outlined where people recommended that they would like to see the coverage of some of like the PACCO adding more stops, the Riverline adding more stops, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But again, what people appreciated, I love to start with the strength, is they really appreciated the convenience and the access to the commutes. And they talked about, using it to get to some destination. They also appreciated, we had many folks, what was really interesting is we had many folks that would use the PACCO to then pick up the river line and go different places. So there were folks that were using multiple points of access through New Jersey Transit or the Delaware River Port Authority and PACCO. So that was something that was really interesting as well, that folks talked about that. And they would love to see, more coverage so that folks wouldn't need to maybe use their car as much. And they also appreciated, this was again before some of the fares were announced, the fare increases. People appreciated the affordability of whether it was the PACCO, the New Jersey Transit, the River Line, whatever it might be. And folks also mentioned and pointed out the addition of the new elevators and the ramps that were recently installed at many of the PACCO stations. Folks really appreciated that. We had the opportunity to engage with many folks who had mobility limitations, and they talked about how helpful those additions were. And now for the recommendations. It's expanding the coverage. So I'm going to get to this on the map that I'll show you, on the next slide. Folks would love to see additional stops added to the River Line. And also the PACCO, particularly, as we all know, the PACCO stops and there's nothing in our southeastern part of the county. In fact, I'll just go to kind of the next slide just for a moment. So the slide on the right with the colors of red, blue, and green, this is showing you kind of where the transportation exists. So the yellow lines are some of the New Jersey Transit bus operating line. And then the red is the PACCO station. The blue is the Atlantic City Rail Station. And then green we use to delineate the River Line. And then there's a black spot in the city of Camden that highlights where the Walter Rand Transportation Center is. So you can see that there's a lot of transportation up in our northeastern part of the county and not as much in our southeastern part of the county. And that's really demonstrated by the map on the right with the red and orange. So the lighter the color, the fewer options for transportation. The darker the colors, there's more access for public transportation. So you can see it's really centralized in, the Camden County area, up in the northeastern part, close to Camden City. And then the further we get down to our Winslows, our Waterfords, our Atcos, Chislehurst, there's not a lot down there, especially where the last PACCO stop is. And so that was something that folks talked about. We had the opportunity to do focus groups down in Waterford and Atco and different places like that. And that gets to the slide that I was just on. They would love to see the PACCO come further down, so they don't have to drive as far to the first stop in Lindenwold. So that was one. And then they would love to see additional weekend or holiday or early morning stop. One of the things that we heard from folks is we spoke to people who worked the overnight shift. And so they might finish at like 2 or 3 in the morning, let's say, and they would tell us time and time again that the first bus wouldn't come through until about 6 o'clock in the morning at, whatever industrial park they were working at. And so that was something that we heard as well. And they would love to see additional stops at the Walter Rand or near the Walter Rand Transportation Center, because they spoke about how congested it gets, particularly peak time. So folks really are looking forward to hopefully the renovation that is forthcoming to really help, make that a little bit cleaner for those transfers. And then the other thing that we heard was also the connections to downtown areas and businesses. There were a lot of folks that we spoke to and that wrote in the survey that work at industrial parks, both in Camden County, whether it's the Belmar Industrial Park, or down in Gloucester County in Swedesboro or some of the other areas in Logan Township. And they talked about how sometimes it's not always easy to get like the buses to those different places depending on their shifts and the timing that they work as well. So those were a couple of things there. And then There's more detailed recommendations also spelled out on page 60 of the report as well, but I wanted to kind of give the high level overview. I just shared the maps with you and kind of why we did that dividing line there. The next thing that we heard too, this was kind of the third theme that came through in importance, was around conditions at the various transit centers or the buses or the train, and safety at the places as well. And so folks, to start off again with the positive, really talked a lot about how they appreciate it that they've seen more officers or more security personnel at some of the stations. Particularly, this was noted for the PATCO stations, especially on the Philadelphia side, and also in Lindenwold as well. We heard that from a lot of folks. They also appreciated how well lit some of the stations and streets were as well. And then we spoke to several folks who are also cyclists and would cycle to different areas, whether it was to the PATCO or to the River Line. And they talked about in certain areas that there were, pedestrian and cycling lanes, and they really appreciated that. Folks, particularly from Cherry Hill and Collingswood, noted that as a real strength, that they felt safer on the road with the bike lanes carved out. And then this, again, similar to the last theme, which highlighted a lot of infrastructure requests from the community, this one also had a similar vein to it as well. Folks would love to see more bike lanes and more sidewalks and crossings. We heard from some places where, particularly when you're heading to Longcrest, Patco, there's not a real clear bike lane for folks. And folks talked about it being like really unsafe, particularly during the peak hours if they were riding their bike to catch the PATCO at the Longcrest station there. So that was one. Folks would love to just see additional cleanings occur on the buses and trains as well, and continue to increase security. Doesn't necessarily have to be personnel. It could also be through cameras as well, and continuing the regular maintenance of the buses. We heard from folks where sometimes the buses would break down, and they, particularly we did this in the summertime, and folks talked about sometimes the air conditioning not working. They couldn't open the windows, and it was really, really hot in the buses as well. And then the other thing that we also heard too was there were several mentions from folks where there were folks at the various PATCO stations or at the Walter Rand Transportation Center, just as an example, where they might be battling homelessness, maybe a mental health condition or a substance abuse addiction as well. And folks really would love to see social workers deployed to try to help those folks. There was certainly, when we spoke to people in the focus group, there wasn't like they wanted them pushed away. They actually wanted to see if there could be support services provided to help them. There was a lot of compassion around that particular topic. And that was something that folks mentioned too, because they recognize, folks might be riding the bus and sleeping on the bus because they don't have anywhere to stay warm in the winter. And so they really wanted to try to say, is it possible for them to bring social workers to help connect folks to resources? So that was really interesting as well. And on page 61, this is kind of spelled out with some additional examples and things like that. The next theme is around affordability. And so folks really loved, they mentioned the discount programs for students or for seniors. And they also mentioned how cost-effective public transportation is too. They said, I can ride round trip on the PATCO for $5.20 from this stop all the way to the end of the line in Philly. I can walk to my job, and it's really affordable. It costs less now to ride the PATCO than it does to pay the bridge fare and the parking, especially with the rise up to $6 for crossing the bridge. So folks talked about that a little bit as well. And then they also talked about too, that what they really appreciated was kind of the multiple ways that they could pay. They could pay through cash, they could pay through card. Some of them have done like the Apple Pay and different things like that. So those were a lot of things that folks really appreciated. And when we spoke to the older adults, they loved the senior discounts, so they could use the PATCO or the New Jersey Transit as well. And so around the affordability, it kind of comes back to a couple of things I already mentioned, is continuing to figure out ways that the transit could be linked to different employment centers or places where there's large large places where people go to work, different commercial centers, or even different residential areas as well. And there were some folks who said, I love to do stuff during the day. Is it possible during the less busy times that there could be free rides or reduced rides? And something that folks really mentioned, I think we heard this in just about every focus group, is for the New Jersey Transit to eliminate the zone pricing. I can't tell you how many times folks shared with us that I paid for the wrong zone, then I had to pay more, or I had to get off and then get back on. So there was a lot of consternation around the zone pricing, and folks were like, we would pay more for a flat fee if we knew what the price was. So there was a lot of confusion around the zones. So that was one that we heard. And then in addition to having the multiple modes of payment, while people appreciated that, they were hoping they could also have the payment structure to be a little bit more simplified, whether it could be something that, they could just have like a card, like the Patco Freedom Card, or something where they could just like scan their phone, or, they could just understand exactly what the payment was around, either purchasing the ticket or purchasing a monthly pass. There was some confusion, especially around New Jersey Transit. Folks really kind of highlighted some of that as well. I'm trying to think if there was anything else there that I mentioned. No, that's the other thing there. And then I just have a couple of more. The next one was around access to information. And this was kind of more broad around like accessing information from the screens to figure out where the trains are, where the buses are. But it also indicated many folks really appreciated the new countdown clocks. I know this seems really rudimentary, but they really mentioned this as something that was really helpful to them at the Patco. And they would love to see at the places where New Jersey Transit hasn't added it to that as well. And people also pointed out how helpful the staff was as well, particularly for Patco and New Jersey Transit. There were several mentions of that because some folks were, said, I didn't always necessarily know which bus I had to get on because there's a lot of confusion around like the 400. Is it the 400, the 408? There was a lot of confusion, and some folks really talked and shared that the staff at New Jersey Transit at the various centers were really helpful to making sure folks got on the right bus. So that was one. With some recommendations, folks really shared that sometimes it's really confusing to that point around like the 400 bus, the 400A, whatever it might be. If there could be some guides or tutorials on the website or the platform, or like, when you're looking to go from point A to point B or C, if there was like a way that could just auto-populate for folks so they didn't have to like figure it out on their own, because some folks really talked about sometimes the maps are really confusing and I don't know exactly where all the places were. And then the other thing was that folks noted, particularly for New Jersey Transit, that when they called the help desk or the lost and found, for example, they were all 973 numbers, and they were all based up in North Jersey. And so if they left something on the bus, it took a while to figure out like which bus they were on, how to get in touch with the driver. And so they were wondering if there could be a designated support number or even a small center down just for South Jersey, for the routes in South Jersey. And then folks would love to see kind of the real-time updates. This gets back to one of my first themes around like if there could be an app, but it tells you like, hey, kind of like when you get an airport notification, somebody likened it to like your plane's now delayed and this or that. If there could be like a real-time update, so that way they can figure out, oh, do I need to figure out something else? Do I need to, how else could I get home or get to work, working around that? And then they talked about the availability of communication channels. So folks really mentioned that text messages would be great. Other folks were like, I check the Patco Twitter, but sometimes it's not always updated, or the Instagram or whatever, like social media channel. And folks were like, if they could have multiple methods, that would be helpful. And that varied by age group. The young people were like, we want to use Twitter or Facebook. And some of the older folks are like, send us a text message and just tell us what's going on. So that was one piece as well. And then there was a need also for like kind of understanding what happens in an emergency, like if there's like a delay where somebody mentioned there had been a terrible accident with the River Line, and then it was like shut down, and then they had to take shuttle buses to bypass that. And they're like, there was a lot of confusion about like what was going on, what was happening. So just being able to communicate that more clearly to help people get to their destination was something that folks highlighted as well. And I think that was everything for the access to information. And the next one is around affordability. Oh, nope, I went backwards. I'm sorry. It's around environmental impact. I realized I went backwards. Is around environmental impact. So folks really shared with us that they love the new electric buses for New Jersey Transit. They said they're really smooth and they're really quiet as well. And that they really appreciated the fact that New Jersey Transit was working to try to minimize the footprint and reduce its pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. They really appreciated that. And they also appreciated that at some of the transit places, if folks were driving electric cars, there were now places where folks could charge their car as well. And so folks would like, folks that were on the electric buses were like, please get more electric buses. We love this quiet ride. They work really well. They're very comfortable in the summer. And then folks would love to see the continuation of kind of continuing to expand the charging port for electric vehicles. And they would love to see kind of the continued infrastructure and outgrowth for green initiatives, however that might look for the public transportation system. They were very supportive of that and appreciated the efforts that had been done to date. And then last, but certainly not least, is I know that I am preaching to the choir here, but that there are a couple of really great transportation projects that are happening. One is here in the city of Camden that folks wrote in their survey and also shared in the focus group, which is the Camden Loop. Time and time again, people noted this in a really positive way, and they would love to see if it could be expanded. Folks said it was really, really affordable at $2 a ride. They were able to get to work. They got to healthcare appointments. They were able to go shopping or go to food pantries. There was a lot of positivity around that, and it was viewed in a really positive way. They also saw it as really reliable too. The rides came when they said that they would. The next one, so this, the Walter Rand Transportation Center Improvement Project, I know is forthcoming, and I think they might have broken ground or they're planning to break ground. I know that this was something that participants really viewed in a positive way. In fact, some of the improvements that participants noted are already going to be covered under the improvement project, such as the renovation of the Camden City Walter Rand Transportation Center and updating those facilities and cleaning it and providing better connections for folks. And so that was something that folks were really excited about. And then the Gloucester Camden line also came up. And what was really interesting is we had some mixed opinions here. But overall, there was a positive viewpoint because folks who live in Gloucester County mentioned that they were really looking forward to not sitting in traffic on 55 and 42 and you know, connecting at one of the PATCO stations or the Walter Rand Transportation Center. So they didn't necessarily have to drive into Philadelphia or other parts of South Jersey. There was a lot of positivity around that as well, but also some mixed opinions. So I want to make sure I'm representing folks who were not you know, maybe in favor of it. And then I just wanted to note there were a couple of things that we also added to the report that I just wanted to draw your attention to as well. We had, as I shared, we had an opportunity to speak with older adults, individuals that had mobility limitation. We did several focus groups in Spanish as well for folks who felt more comfortable conversing in Spanish. And we also spoke with individuals who were unhoused or battling mental health or substance abuse challenges. And so they also, we provided a carve out for those voices as well. Many of what they shared, much of what they shared also aligned with what I just shared with you, but I just wanted to tease out that we really tried to reach a diverse set of voices and populations and those who engage with the public transit system. And then the next thing that we did as well is there is a lot of transportation projects happening in Camden County or scheduled to happen in the future. And so at the time of finishing this report in October of 2024 and getting it printed and finalized by December, at the time of printing in December 2024, we created an inventory of all of the current projects at that time. So that way it was available for folks. We listed it by municipality and county as well, so it could be a helpful resource for folks as well. And then the next thing that we did is in many of our focus groups and interviews, getting back to the access to information piece, folks shared with us that they weren't familiar with all of the public transportation options that were available, whether there's options for folks that are older and may need support like Access Link, or some of our townships and counties offer, opportunities to take people for shopping. So what we did was we reached out to the different municipalities and also the county information to gather all of that information and create a table of all of that information that's available with the website and the phone numbers and the contact information for folks. So that way it could be useful for folks. We heard that sometimes folks were like, I didn't know there was this bus available for, because folks who are older might have given up driving. And so we created that opportunity or that information for folks as well. And then I just wanted to share that we're in the process of still continuing to share the findings. We have done a lot of presentations to a lot of organizations like this one to share the information, and we've created some one-pagers and fact sheets, and we're in the process of going back to all of those places who helped us with this to share that information back with the community as well. We have also shared a copy of the report and its information and the fact sheet with every legislator in the Southern New Jersey area as well. And we've had some of them reach out and have briefings and ask questions as well. And then we also had some interest in the media as well. I don't know, I was interviewed by WHYY in the Philadelphia Inquirer, which was really interesting and very humbling to have those interviews done. And so we're happy to share this information. We're trying to make it accessible so that people can use it to help drive change in our communities. And then I'll just share, just to kind of close the loop. I know I don't need to say this to all of you, but the community voice and the community input is really, really important to really understanding what it is that our end users need. And that's why this report was so exciting, because we were able to do that for one of the counties. We would love to do this for all of the other counties as well, to really highlight and amplify those priorities, because they might be different. And we would also love to see, what some of the research says around microtransit, do a deeper dive into what is going on at the Camden Loop and how that's working, and could that potentially be scaled and replicated somewhere down in Salem City or in some of the places in Cumberland as well, like Bridgeton, Millville, Vineland, or other places. And then the last thing I wanted to share is my director, Mavis Asayadu Frimpong, was asked by the nonprofit Development Center for Southern New Jersey, I always get that acronym wrong, to facilitate some conversations with stakeholders in the nonprofit arena around transportation. And they came up with kind of a series of recommendations as well, which kind of aligned nicely with the community's recommendations from this report. One of them is, folks mentioned that there's not a South Jersey-wide regional transit plan. There's different transit plans within the municipalities or the county. So seeing if they could be synthesized to one, one kind of regional-wide plan. And then also understanding if there's ways that folks could bring down funding for Southern New Jersey as well. We know, I didn't put it in this slide deck, but there is a map that we have referenced before that shows all of the transportation up the further north you get to New York, and it's all roads and all colors and all different things. And then you compare that to South Jersey, and I showed you that map. And so I could fill that map 10 times over and it still wouldn't overlay onto what's up in North Jersey and New York. So I just wanted to share that as well. And then there were, you know, some other suggestions around what I just shared around like potentially exploring microtransit ideas for some of our rural areas as well. And then figuring out, you know, how folks could think creatively around whether it's ride shares or other opportunities to help folks get to and from work as well. And so I just wanted to share that with you, and then just end with this research was really, I'm here representing the Walter Rand Institute, and I had the pleasure of working on the project. But my colleague Carla Villacis really led this project as the principal investigator, and we were assisted by the next generation of researchers, Shag, Oz, and Fawaz, who are students at the Walter Rand Institute, and they had the opportunity to engage with some of our neighbors as well and participate in the research. So we used it as a training opportunity for them. And so I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge the full team, because this certainly would not have been done without all of their collective efforts, going early in the morning to canvass for folks to take the survey, or staying, you know, late to catch people on their way home as well. So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge the team. And with that, I will stop because I could talk, I could keep talking. I'm really excited about this opportunity to speak with all of you, but I want to thank you for your time and your attention. And I am more than happy to take any questions or anything. So I'll stop there. Again, thank you for your time and your attention.
Again, thank you very much for your time, Kristen. For those of you, and I know that I sent this particular Camden County study around just yesterday afternoon when I had the chance. I told Kristen I was going to review it. I did actually manage to make it all the way through item F.
Oh,
But due to
wonderful.
time constraints, I couldn't get any
Okay.
further than that. But for those of you who have not looked at it yet, you should read it. It is an amazing document, not only for the items that are developed through consensus and the feedback, but within the document, they actually they document statements from the riding public, those people who are out there using the public transportation, and some of the things that they have to say about their day-to-day experiences or things that have occurred to them over time are pretty eye-opening. So it is definitely worth the time and effort to read the document over and see the content that's in there. I only have, well, I have one or two quick questions.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, Kristen, could you by chance, well, Sean has a question. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh,
You
Sean,
do
I'm
your
sorry. I
question.
didn't see your hand raised.
No, my bad. Bill, you, by all means, you can go ahead if you want first.
Oh, I was just wondering, is it possible that Walter Rand could actually take credit for nudging PATCO into their program of implementing the rotating station clean?
I would love to take credit, but I don't know if there's a correlation there. I mean, when did they start it, Bill? We did share this with, actually, we met with PATCO and New Jersey Transit after we created the report and shared all of these recommendations with them, and actually gave them about an hour-long briefing, if not a little bit longer.
Probably about 2 months ago. I don't know if Ed has a better.
We met with them in January. I'm going to take credit, Bill.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Somewhere around, yeah, I would say somewhere around 2 months ago it started.
Yeah.
My other question is, in terms of, you were talking about the simplification of fare structure and so forth. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if anybody articulated the idea of a regional fare implement. In other words, something like the Oyster card in London that, kind of takes the responsibility away from the agencies per se collecting
Right.
fare and turn it over to another entity, and that way the travel across operators would be seamless.
Right. To my knowledge, and I participated in most of the focus groups, I think at least I think it was all of them. Nobody mentioned that, but I'm more than happy to just kind of go back and check the transcripts. But I don't remember anybody mentioning that.
Yeah.
It was interesting because everybody kind of viewed them as separate collection points or payment points, and folks
Right,
seemed
right.
okay with that. If there was a way to kind of just make it easier, like folks had talked about, when SEPTA shipped it to the key, or that new pass that they have, I might be using the wrong word, like that was just easier than using the coins. They didn't have to make sure they had the coins on them. So that was, it doesn't exactly answer your
Right.
question, but nobody had mentioned that.
Right. Sean, go ahead. You were the next one or the first
I
one.
know
to
everybody's got their
raise.
hands up. I promise I can stay on a little past 4 if needed. It's not
Okay.
a problem.
Awesome. Kristin, thank you very much, by the way. That was a great presentation. And thank you for the work that you and your colleagues do. It's vitally important, especially to us, right? Because, we've got problems that need fixing.
Right.
So just from the context of, even though Tri-County Sustainability has been around for a long time, this public transportation committee that Bill's chairing is very new, and so
Okay.
we're still formulating, the mission. And I know you've given us the information, and it's our job to digest it. But the hope here is that from a recommendation standpoint,
Mhm.
any ideas in terms of what, as a committee, our priorities should be as we look to grow mass transit in South Jersey?
Yeah, I think, and I hope this isn't too much of a pressure or a lift or anything, but I think one of the things that folks shared with us is that they would like to see it expanded, because it seemed to me that if it could be expanded, more folks would then be inclined to use it. And so to me, I think the common thing is, I think back to all of the different projects, not just the Camden County funds, but I just a little bit of background as an aside. I've been at the Institute for, it'll be 18 years in September. I like to joke that I started in the basement as a student research assistant, and I've worked my way all the way up to the 3rd floor as associate director. I've worked on every floor. And I think as I think back to all the projects that I've worked on, whether they've been criminal justice or healthcare or whatever, the common thread is like, we need more transportation. We need to get people around. And it's these ideas where there are people that are lower income that need the access. That's where they're struggling to get to those places, whether it's from their homes to work or vice versa. And I think, Sean, the piece around like expanding that, like I think about the PATCO. I can't tell you how many people were like, if the PATCO came down to ATCO or to Winslow, we would totally pick it up here. But if I'm driving to Lindenwold, I can stay in my car for another 15 or 20 minutes and just get to work rather than park and then use the PATCO. But I don't know if that answers your question, Sean, and tell me if it didn't.
Sure. No, it definitely does. And just for your benefit,
Please.
just because you mentioned the Camden Loop, we've been working with them and Isles, who facilitate the Go Trenton,
Okay.
to see, because what we love about Go Trenton is not only is it microtransit,
Right.
it's also battery electric.
Yep.
And so we've been talking to them about, we've actually got them together now as part of our air quality committee.
Okay.
And so that's something, maybe if Walter Rand is doing microtransit research, maybe we could get that team involved in what you're doing, as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, we would love to, learn more about that and maybe see if there's a grant we could apply for to do the research, Sean. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, awesome.
And I don't know who was
Right.
next, John or Edward, and I don't want to pick
Yeah,
one
I'm
and
not
like
sure myself.
offend somebody.
I think John was next. Ed, don't hate me if I'm wrong.
No, John was next.
Don't hate me either, Ed.
I'll try to make it brief then.
Please.
For the GCL stops,
Yes.
I haven't researched this as much myself. Are they planning any kind of commercial or residential development around the station, as opposed to some of these purely park and ride uses you see along some of the PATCO stops?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you asked that, John, because some of them, and I can't remember off the top of my head which ones, are going to be park and ride, but there are some that they are talking about doing some rezoning and creating housing either near the station or like very like super close to it. So you are right. I just don't have that list in front of me. I'd need a day or two just to go back into the records to grab it, John, if that's helpful to you.
Yeah,
Hey, John,
Go ahead.
go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, this is the opportunity now during the initial build out to plan for that, to
Right.
put it in retroactively, like they're trying to, they may do in Westmont or Collingswood or whatever. It's
Yeah.
much more controversial once it's already parking. So
Exactly. And I know one of them they were thinking about doing was, I think it was either in Glassboro or Deptford. There was one of them along that line that they were thinking about doing the rezoning. And then I think there was some pushback, but it hasn't been fully off the table yet because it wasn't voted on yet. So I can get that list. I know I have it in the report, and I know I have the primary list somewhere in our notes and data. So I can send that over to you, John.
great, thanks.
No problem.
Hey, John, it's Bill Ritzler. What I was going to say is, one of the nice things about selecting, NJ3 as the corridor for Gloucester County is that most of the stations wind up in locations that are already centers of place, right?
Okay.
So, not saying that there's no park and rides, but by virtue of picking that corridor, going through the center of the towns, the number of parking rides are going to be substantially less than they would be if, for instance, the median of Route 55 was selected. To kind of give you a little more information, so there is a park and ride planned for the Pittman-Mantua border, and it's on the Mantua side. And across Lambs Road, which is actually in Pittman Borough, there's a developer who put forward a plan. Um, I don't know that it really encompasses the presence of the proposed station, but right now it is a very underutilized industrial plant. It used to be owned by Sony, and they made records and then CDs. And more recently, its only function has been kind of an ad hoc training center for some of the county law enforcement training sessions. But somebody put forward a plan to uh, demolish that and build a hotel potentially in the corner, along with some single family housing, some multifamily housing, and an on-spec warehouse of about 250,000 square feet along Lambs Road. What happened on the station side, which is to say in Mantua Township, is that part of the property that they were considering buying to be included for the park and ride was sold off by the existing owner to somebody else who was going to build some type of light industrial structure. So it's all fluid, right? And how it eventually evolves has yet to be seen. I'm sorry, Ed, go ahead.
Thank you. I had the chance after all this information was emailed to me. I read these start to finish. Both the outline of the transportation priorities and
Okay.
transportation accessibility in southern New Jersey. And I made a ton of notes and references and things going in. I stayed up real late in the night doing this last night.
Thank you, Ed. You didn't have to do that. I was happy to answer questions or come back.
I wasn't 100% clear on what we needed to know, so I decided if I was going to do what I was going to do.
I feel like I need to create a test and see if Ed,
But first, I really do want to speak to the quality of the work that I've seen presented here as a researcher and as a city, urban, and transportation planner
Thank you.
myself. I found these to be well written. They were exceptional, and they reiterate points that I have constantly reiterated
Right.
in studies that I've provided for South
Right.
Jersey. Now, although we didn't necessarily talk so much about this in what you provided today, I
Sure.
did notice, and I have a question about in the
Sure.
transportation accessibility in southern New Jersey packet.
Sure.
I'm a little unclear as to how the Camden County link,
Mm-hmm.
which is described in a lot of detail in this, is
Right.
really part of a public transportation model. I mean, a lot of information about it, but I'm just not sure. A, I understand how it works in this
Right.
bigger model that you seem to be proposing, and B, why this is the preferred choice for the former Atlantic City line right of way rather than the more logical implementation of simply restoring service on the
Right.
Clementon branch from Clementon to Camden, be it via light rail or traditional heavy passenger rail.
Right. And so I think if I can remember, I was just looking at this because it had been a while since I wrote that report. I think what we were thinking, and again, I recognize this was written back in 2023, so things could have changed a little bit, Ed, and we're happy to kind of, talk a little bit about that. I think one of the things that we were thinking is the way that this was shared with us when we did a couple of interviews and information that was shared with us that's also publicly available through the link is that folks kind of constructed this not just like as a bike trail, because you're talking about the link trail, right? I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page with you. This one, they talked about how there would be like different bike trails, but then they were also hoping to create opportunities for either opening up some of the bridges, opening up maybe potentially the light rail, but it hadn't been decided. And I remember putting this in the report and thinking to myself, this hasn't been finalized yet, about how each of the 4 phases were. And I'm going to be transparent with you on this. This was, I think, if I remember correctly, either 2022 or very early 2023. The U.S. Department of Transportation gave New Jersey what was called a RAISE grant to work on this. And it was going to be, I think it was either 5 or 6 years that it would start in like late 2023 and then run to about 2029, 2030, roughly. I know that several of the RAISE grants, not to be political, because we try to be very objective and nonpartisan, but several RAISE grants through the U.S. Department of Transportation have been pulled since we wrote this grant, or since we wrote this report. I don't remember if New Jersey was on that list. I thought it was, and I was like, I remember seeing Nebraska, I remember seeing like New Mexico, and I was like, I think New Jersey was in there too. And so I'm curious as to whether this will move forward, because the largest chunk of money to support this was the federal government under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act.
Okay.
And I wasn't trying to give you a political answer or not answer your question at all.
But believe me, I was walking that fine line a few hours ago at a different meeting. It's just that I look at that, and when the link proposal first came up, I've always looked at that from a transportation planning perspective as underutilization of the right of way. When I'm not dismissing the idea of the trail.
No.
I totally believe that that's a real opportunity for rails with trails, but knowing the shift in where population is moving, and also knowing that Conrail has been stepping away further and further and further from the Beasley's Point secondary track. And in this case, I'm referring to it by its old title of just specifically the Clementon branch from Camden to Winslow Junction. That's a line that once Conrail finally walks, and that will happen, there's not going to be sufficient freight traffic on that branch to prevent the institution either of new traditional commuter rail or light rail. And I feel like that the Atlantic City Rail Corridor, which is a history of being super elevated, designed for high-speed service, and it runs right down the middle of the county through the most densely populated areas, all the way to Atco and Winslow Junction. I just feel like rails with trails. It already goes through the center of major towns. There's opportunity to create park and rides. I'm just not sure that that's why I was asking if this is just, well, we're putting a bike trail there, or this is inclusive of the longer term possibility of maybe restoring some kind of passenger service to the former Clementon branch.
Yeah, and they had when we had spoken to a couple folks in the county, and they had said this is kind of the draft, and we're going to expand it and do it like phase by phase, and look at. They said we want to try to utilize some of the existing rail lines or other features that could be available. And then now that the funding has been cut, I don't know if this will continue. In full disclosure,
Okay.
but I can look into it and find out. I can reach out to the person I spoke to
But
about this. I'm happy to do that.
don't go out of your way. I was just wondering. I
Yeah,
just had this more general question of how
yeah,
far is the planning in that, and then
right.
what was presented in there. I just walked away from reading that with not really
Yeah,
having an understanding of how
yeah,
that linked into New Jersey Transit, Patco, and the
yeah,
broader transportation network.
yep.
It read like, well, here's a park, or here's a bicycle trail in the middle of. Well, there could
Right.
be, you know.
Right. And that I think, it's so funny you bring this up because we were like of two minds of whether we were going to include that or not. And we're like, we should because they announced it, but we know this could be a challenge. So I really appreciate, you bringing it up
I
and
also
asking the question.
I also have the bias of being a transportation planner in terms of my education and then what I do with the organizations that I'm also a part of. So
Right.
I know I'm coming at it with a real
No.
bias.
And I appreciate it, trust me. I never take any offense to questions or things like that. So thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
think somebody else had their hand up. Was it you, Bill, or Sean? I'm not
I
sure
did.
who it
I
was.
did. I know
Okay.
we're already 5 minutes over, so won't belabor it. But I just wanted to reiterate that we have a venue for you, Kristen,
Okay.
as you decide to launch new research initiatives, etc.
Yeah.
Either through this channel or our air quality committee.
Okay.
And the reason I bring it up is sometimes it matters, like specific audience in the room. Like on the air quality committee, we have all 30 members of the legislature as sitting
Okay.
members in the Camden, Gloucester, and Burlington. So
Okay.
sometimes you want that audience. So we give you 10 minutes in front of that audience.
Absolutely.
It's kind of on purpose. So we can kind of say, all right, now we want you to sponsor bills that support
Right.
some of this stuff, right? So
Exactly.
so don't hesitate to reach out if we can provide you a venue.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Or if there is an opportunity either with this research or something else that we've done, I just wanted to take a moment, if it's okay, just to share, and I can send the link as well. We've just worked with Inspira Health Network to do a health needs assessment for Gloucester, Cumberland and Salem. So I recognize it's only one service area for you guys, but we did a regional report and then we did a county by county profile of the needs. Transportation, not surprisingly, came up in all three. And then we also looked at the existing strengths and then also the recommendations from the community. Now, because this related to the healthcare system, because the hospitals have to do this every 3 years under the Affordable Care Act to identify and prioritize community need, there is a little bit of a focus around like accessing care, accessing, food and other social determinants. But I wanted to just share that we do have that, and transportation was mentioned, and I'm happy if it's helpful or useful to send over the link to Bill and share that information with you as well. I didn't want to go too far out of my remit today and bring in another project. So I really appreciate the extra time you guys have given me, and I'm sorry to keep everybody a few minutes longer.
No, that's absolutely, this presentation was awesome.
Thank you.
And I
I'm going to tell my
100%
boss you
happy.
guys all said that. I was like, the word they used was awesome.
I'm almost
Absolutely.
sure I participated in one of the focus groups that was run for this.
Wonderful. Yes.
No wonder you liked the study, Ed. It was your feedback.
No, I'm 100% sure I did some months ago.
And Ed, I'm sorry, we did so many focus groups that I don't even remember who participated, nor would I self-disclose that to you because I would get in trouble with our IRB.
No, and I know that. It occurred to me. I was thinking, I think I participated in one. I went
That's
to
perfect.
Camden for it. Went to the library. Yeah, I'm pretty
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
One other thing I'd like to offer, anything so you've done Camden County and
Yeah.
hopefully you'll be able to study county by county, or maybe
Yeah.
smaller counties will be grouped together. But in terms of if you need a hand with somebody sending letters or making some kind of outreach to support the funding grants, obtaining the
Okay.
funding grants, please,
I'll let
wink
you
or
guys
nod
know.
or send us a message. Absolutely.
I'll be more than happy to do that. I will share with all of you, there were a couple of federal grants that we had our eye on to apply for later this year that were planning grants that would have fit perfectly for the other counties.
Right.
Those are not happening now. I will continue. We're going to be looking to expand, maybe to see if there are foundations or other organizations, maybe at the state level or something that would support this. So I wanted to just share, we had our eye on a couple of opportunities that we thought we could be real competitive for at the federal level. But unfortunately they have been pulled back. And then there was an opportunity, we were working with a partner down in the shore communities to apply for a small planning grant, and that was pulled after we applied. So I was like, oh, I'm so glad I did all that work. Not to be political, but I was like, you guys know how much work goes into a federal grant. So if there's any
Absolutely.
ideas or suggestions you have, we're fully open to them, and I will keep that in mind as well, because obviously a letter from your organization would go a long way in helping us secure funding.
That's awesome. John Graminger, thank you for showing up. I hope we didn't bombard you with so much information. This is actually John's first meeting.
Well, John, thank you
So,
for your time and making the time while you were driving.
Yeah, but I'm going to drop you an email after this, Kristin.
That sounds great. And Ed, thank you also for your time and also for reading through everything. And the same thing to you, Sean and Bill and John. I really appreciated the opportunity to speak with all of you, and I appreciated the extra time you gave me. I've realized, Bill, I went over the 30 minutes I told you yesterday.
that's quite all right. I think everybody here absolutely took the content to heart, and I promise to read the rest of the study when I have
Oh,
an opportunity.
that's absolutely fine. And if there's any questions or you would like to discuss anything further, please don't hesitate. Or if there's another committee you'd like me to share, even just a small portion that might be more relevant, let me know. I don't have to do the whole 45-minute. I can tailor it. So I really appreciate you guys and your time and your attention and your interest. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your evening. And did it hit 90 degrees today? I guess we'll find out when we go outside.
It got fairly close if it didn't actually. Well,
Okay.
again, thank you very much. You take care.
You
Enjoy the
too.
rest of your day.
Thank you.